Hey guys, welcome back to today's vlog. I'm excited to have you here, so we're just going to jump right into it. If you are new here, our family has been greatly impacted by adoption. So before choosing adoption for our family, we had 4 biological kids, thought we were done, and then the Lord said, nope, you're not done. So he brought home Michaela from the Philippines into our family. He also brought home little Isabel from China into our family. And we are actually in the process of bringing home another little girl from China, of which we've been waiting for over 2.5 years. Due to the pandemic, China has not resumed adoption, so we are just anxiously awaiting. Our purpose in this YouTube platform is as a place of encouragement to helpfully push other families into saying, like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it, and they choose adoption. So most of the time you're hearing from myself or Stan, but today you get to hear from our daughter Emerson. You get to hear a different perspective. She is 18, almost 19 years old, and she had the chance to be on a podcast and share what her journey has looked like walking through adoption. And she also had the opportunity to share about mission work outside of the country, and you just kind of really get to see the heart of who Emerson is. And so our great friends from the UK, we actually met them last year. They asked Stan and I to be on their podcast to talk about parenting and marriage. And we thoroughly enjoyed our time talking with them. You know how when you meet those people and you're like, yes, like you get me and I get you? That's how it was with Andrew and Daphne. I mean, we just loved our time with them, talking to them that day on the podcast. We've kept in touch. I think almost every single week, Daphne and I communicate on social media, and they have had a ministry for I don't really know how many years. I mean, 20 plus years, maybe 30 plus years. And essentially what they do, hopefully I won't butcher it, they travel from country to country, raising disciples, training the next generation to be bold for Christ, to be pursuers of Christ, and they are the real deal. And so I'm going to leave all of their information. I'm going to leave their website, their YouTube channel. You can watch all of their podcasts. They have some fascinating guests on there with impactful stories for the kingdom. I'm going to leave all their information in the description box below. That was a mouthful. Please go check them out. Go give them a follow, and go check out their websites. Okay, so let's get right into the podcast. I think you will be highly encouraged by all that Emerson has to say. She shares the hard truths about adoption. She shares great encouragement, and I'm just excited to share it with you. Let's go.
So before we begin your whole journey, Emerson, I think it's important that you tell people who are not watching on YouTube but are just listening audio, how old are you?
I'm 18 and I will be 19 in December.
Okay, so that's really important when we start talking about what you've been up to. So let's go back in time. You were a family, 4 of you, 3 brothers and yourself, and living just a comparatively normal life, although there was much about how your parents raised you that I wouldn't call normal in many people's terms, and their priorities. But can you take us to the moment when the word adoption cropped up in your family, when it became a discussion? What happened at that time from your perspective?
Well, I think it was in like 2014. My parents had mentioned adopting to us. They kind of brought us in the living room and talked to us about it. And at the time, I knew what adoption was. I don't remember how old I was, but I knew what adoption was, but I had never thought that I'd hear those words come out of my own parents' mouth. Not because we shouldn't be doing it, but because sometimes you just don't think of your family doing something that big. And after they had talked to us about it for a little bit, and I was thinking, wait, I can finally get the sister I've always wanted. Because I grew up with 3 brothers, being the only girl, and I had always wanted a little sister. And so I was very excited whenever they told us that we were going to be adopting, especially adopting a little girl. And so as about 2 years went on, we went through a few different little kids that we prayed about and allowed the Lord to lead us to or from. And then Michaela came up, and we adopted her and brought her home in 2016. And that was the highlight of my life, finally getting a little sister.
So there are a few words that you mentioned that I think probably hold a key as to how you were able to go on this journey. Your parents involved you, you prayed about it, you went on the journey of looking at possibilities and perhaps saying, no, that child's not for us, but maybe another is. So did you feel very included in the process?
Oh, 100%. My parents were very good about, if there wasn't ever a possibility of adopting a child, they would always come show us, tell us about the child. So we never felt, me and my brothers never really felt like discluded from the whole adoption journey. Our parents asked us questions, how we felt about it. So it was a very intimate family decision that we made and that we prayed on. So I never felt discluded, if that's a word.
When you look back and you think, yes, I'm in for this journey of adoption, I feel it's what God wants, you couldn't have had any idea really what it was going to be like. I mean,
Not at all.
you had an idea of a little sister who was going to come along, but it wasn't necessarily like that all the time. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you had to face personally once you began to bring these little girls into your home?
No, it definitely wasn't at all what we had thought of, especially being the age that I was. I kind of expected, just a little girl to come in and she's, it's easy, it's just like raising another little sibling. But bringing them in at the ages of 5 that we did, it was a little more difficult because they were more grown up and they kind of understood what was going on and like, okay, I'm in a new family, like where am I? I've never been here before. So when we brought Mika home, it was a little bit difficult because at the airport, whenever we went to see her and within a few days of her being home, she didn't really want to come up to like me or my brothers or anything because she wasn't used to us. Whereas in my head, I was expecting I'm going to get a little sister and we're going to be best friends and we're going to click immediately, but that's not exactly how it was right away. Now looking back, I understand why that was because you're a little 5-year-old girl coming into a completely new family in a completely new environment. So with Mika, it took a couple weeks, but then we immediately became best friends after a couple weeks, and we still are to this day. With Isabel, it was a little bit more difficult. She's from China. She has severe special needs. She's completely blind. She's almost 10 years old, still bottle fed, still in diapers, can't really walk that much on her own. She has stimming issues. And so it was a little bit more difficult because when she came home, she was so used to being in a crib for 5 years of her life in the orphanage. And so coming here to America and stuff and like she could feel the different atmosphere that she was in. For the first few weeks of her being home, it was screaming, crying all the time. I think we all lost a lot of sleep from it. But so it was very difficult at that point because I was like, okay, God, I need you to work here because this is stressing all of us out, not knowing how to deal with this. But she's been home for about 4 years now, and she's one of the happiest little girls I've ever seen. Looking back, I wouldn't have changed anything. In the beginning, I feel like a lot of people would have been like, I don't really know if I want a little girl that's difficult to deal with. But looking back, I would go through it all again for her.
Yeah, I guess, for people listening to this that maybe haven't seen the videos on YouTube and things like that, your family have been pretty proactive in trying to find kids that have extra challenges, shall we say. So, maybe when you first started thinking about this journey of adoption, you're thinking about, this sister you're going to have, and you're going to run and be best friends and go, just do regular sister stuff.
So was there a moment when you said, no, I'm done with this, I can't do it, I want my parents back, I want my family back, I want my sleep back? Was there ever a moment you thought that?
No, there really wasn't. I mean, as difficult as it was, I knew that there was a reason that God was bringing these children into our lives. And after seeing what especially Isabel lived like in China and the orphanage that she was in and the way that she was completely neglected, it broke my heart to the point where I was like, okay, God, even though it's so difficult and I'm losing sleep and it's stressful, I want to bring more kids in, and I don't want to even think about how I didn't want to do this at one point, because those children, I mean, she needed us. Without us, she would probably be dead right now. And that's the most heartbreaking thing to think about, is that there's so many kids out there that are still lying in cribs, waiting for a family to come see them, and take them home and give them a better life. And so I told God, I was like, no matter how difficult this journey is with adoption, no matter how difficult each child is, if it keeps progressing with each child that we bring home, I still want to do it, because I trust that you're doing something for not only the little kid, but you're doing something for our family with it too.
And you mentioned that you have 3 adopted. So we've talked about 2 of them. Can you just talk a bit about the 3rd child?
Yeah, so Lily Grace, we are still in the process of bringing her home. We have all of the paperwork finished, but China's not allowing us to go travel and get her just yet because of COVID restrictions. The borders are still closed. We've been in this process with her for almost 2 years now, and we don't know when the borders will be back opened up. It could be a couple more years. It could be a few more years. We don't know when it'll be. She's 4 years old. She's also from China, I had mentioned that. And she has a few issues, I think some growing issues and some neurological issues that I'm not completely sure of the names. But we'll get updates for her every once in a while, but it's not super consistent as we wish it was.
So how has your attitude changed, as it were, to expecting her to come when she comes home, as to when you were thinking, right, okay, Michaela is going to be coming, when you have more of a concept of what this is actually going to be like? Do you think you're different in the way that you're approaching it?
I do think I'm different in certain ways in approaching this one, mainly because we've gone through it 2 different times. And so I think part of my mindset is a little bit more mature in it. I was still, like I said a minute ago, like I'm still very, God, whatever your plan is, but I'd say it is a little bit more irritating, because I feel like we've been waiting for so long and not knowing when she's going to come home or how long it's going to be. It is more irritating, because with Isabel and Mika, it was kind of like, okay, we know that we're going to get her in like this amount of time. But now with COVID restrictions, it could be years before she comes home. And it affected my mindset for a little bit, not out of, okay, I don't want her anymore, but more so, okay, God, I'm like, we've been waiting for a long time. Like, when is she going to come home? It's time. She's still waiting. So it upset me at some points, but I also know that this time waiting period is crucial in God's plan for us with her.
Well, you being her sibling is naturally different from being her parent, and yet the bonding that you are expressing and the care and the concern for her, and you haven't even seen her yet, is something that maybe people who haven't adopted can't appreciate. You know, how can you bond, and how can you be worried, and how can you be so concerned about a child that you've never met? How do you explain that?
Well, I think whenever you can see those things for yourself and the way that they lived. Now, from the very beginning with Mika, I had the same kind of bond with her, even though I didn't know her. And I think after she came home, I was like, okay, I saw, where she lived. Even though she was in a great orphanage, I still saw she was alone. She didn't have a family or anything. And then with Isabel, I saw the conditions that she lived in, and it broke my heart. And so I immediately clung to her as well. And so I think after adopting 2 different times and seeing what it's like where they lived in, their original country versus coming here, and the way that they just want to cling to you immediately, I think with Lily Grace, it's just tugged on my heart a little bit more because I understand where she's coming from and I understand what it's going to be like when she gets home. Maybe not exactly what it's going to be like when she gets home, but enough to know that even though she's not my blood, even though I've never met her, like it's still in God's plan for her to be my sister.
And how have your brothers walked the journey? I know you can't speak on their behalf, but you do have some insight of how each of them walked. Was it a smooth for them, or did one of them go through some bumps along the way?
I think from what I've seen and from what I've spoken with them, like it was a pretty smooth journey for all of us. I think mainly because the way our parents raised us, and we need to help people, and we're here to, help and do good for other people and preach the gospel and stuff. And from the way that they've been very open with us about adoption from the very beginning, it was easier for us knowing, okay, if anything happens, our parents are going to come to us. Our parents care about how we feel about it, so they're going to come speak to us if anything new comes up. And so my brothers are a lot like me in the sense of adoption. They're very nurturing to my sisters, very close with them. They love being around all of them, or both of them. And they're just as possessive of Lily Grace, even though she's not here, the same way that I am. So I think for all of us, it was a pretty smooth journey for the most part. But I'm sure there have been moments where we've all kind of questioned, okay, is this actually going to happen? Is she actually going to come home? But I think overall, we all just have a trust in God, knowing that, okay, if he's leading us down this road, then we're going to make it to the end of the road. So I think the way that we thought like that, it helped a lot with not having as many bumps.
So you have two of them have come home, a third you're waiting to come home. What is the vision of your family for adoption? In one sense, it is broader than your family. Are you thinking with your family, right, 3, we'll have done our bit? How do you see the vision for your family going forward?
Honestly, I think my parents are going to keep adopting until God says that's enough. But at the same time, I don't know if God would ever say stop adopting children. So I think they're gonna keep going until they feel at peace with, okay, this is our family, this is good. But again, that's all up to God. And I know that me and all my brothers, we want to adopt as well whenever we get married. So it's kind of just leading from like our parents have adopted so many children, and then it's leading into each of us wanting to adopt children, and then hopefully our kids will want to adopt children.
I guess it really shows
whole family of adopted kids.
I guess it shows as well that you and your brothers are already thinking about it. So this isn't now that it's just something, even though your parents took you all on the journey, they were the ones that kind of initiated it. But it just shows that now actually all of you have owned it so much that you're already thinking about doing it yourselves when you all get married.
100%. My older brother, he's married and has 2 children of his own. And I think that they're thinking about just having one more biological kid, and then they're going to start adopting. And for me, I want to adopt 100%. My 2 little brothers want to adopt. And I don't think that any of us would want to adopt the way that we do. And it wouldn't already be on our mind if we wouldn't have brought home my little sisters and saw the change in their life.
Now, you've been abroad yourself. Did you have a heart for missions, for the nations, before you started adopting? Or did adoption help also to give you that heart for the nations and for young people, children around the world?
So I think I've always had a heart for helping people. It's always been a very big thing for me. Even whenever I was little, I always wanted to travel the world and go out of the country and go help people. But I'd say after we adopted, especially Isabel, my heart really started seeing the way that they lived in other countries, and that just made my heart grow even more. And then in 2018, the year that we brought Isabel home, I went on a mission trip to Guatemala with my church for a week. And then I also went again in 2019. And after those 2 mission trips, my heart just grew so much bigger for missions and going out of the country and stuff. While you can be a missionary wherever you're from, I specifically felt called to international missions. And so after 2018, 2019, I kept praying and I was like, God, I know this is what you want for me. But when? Because I knew that he was going to send me back for longer than just a week. And so I prayed over it for 4 years. 4 years I was praying, God, send me whenever it's your time. And who knows, I was like, I could go whenever I'm 30 years old, or I could go in the next year. I was like, God, I know that your plan is going to be better than my own timing for this. So I prayed over it for 4 years, kept saying, God, send me. And then finally this past summer, he sent me to Guatemala for 2 months, where I did a lot of mission and community work.
Wow. I love the fact that you just said, God send me. You didn't have an idea. You didn't say, well, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. You just had a send me. And I think the Great Commission starts with a go. It doesn't start with a select. It's with a go. And I love the fact that you went open-handed and open-hearted to say, where you go, I'm on the journey with you. And yeah. I think so many times people have this idea that you've got to be in your mid-20s and you've got to have gone to Bible school and you've got to have had this training, you've got to have the other training before you can obey the Great Commission.
Right.
But you just took God at his word and he said go, and you went. What were the challenges that you faced over those 6 months personally?
2 months.
2 months.
2 months.
Maybe that was prophetic.
Yeah, it's 6 months. Yeah, that's when she comes to us.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, that's when I come to you.
2 months.
First going there, my first 2 weeks living there were really difficult for me because, whenever I had gone in 2018 and 2019, I didn't get homesick at all because I knew I'm going home in a week. But I guess the first 2 weeks I was there this summer were more difficult because I knew that I wasn't going home anytime soon. I was going to be away for a while. And so it was just a lot of calling family, reading letters, looking at pictures for the first 2 weeks. And then finally, I was like, I'm tired of sitting in my bedroom, looking at pictures from back home. While that's good, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to just miss home all the time and miss out on so many opportunities. So I was laying in bed one night and I was like, God, you brought me here for a reason. And that reason was not to walk around moping around about missing home and just missing all these opportunities that you have for me here. I was like, so while it's not wrong for me to miss home, I need you to take away my homesickness and replace it with, that kind of fire to want to get up and actually go out and do things. And so over the next couple months that I was there, I didn't really feel as homesick. Because I asked God, I didn't want to miss an opportunity. I didn't want to miss the whole reason that I was there because I was sitting in my room missing home. And so the first 2 weeks were difficult, but the rest of the time after that was like the time of my life. It was life-changing for sure.
How do you feel your life has changed as a result of it?
I feel like coming back, a lot of people expected to hear these really big stories. I saved someone's life, or this is what I saw. Like they expect to hear such big stories that like give them goosebumps. But for me, it was a lot of internal change, just like mentally and emotionally, and just going on a mission trip out of the country for 1 week is enough. But like living there for almost a whole summer, you really get to see like one step further about what that culture is like. And I feel like it's changed me so much, and emotionally and mentally, as in how to handle things and where God wants me to go. And it was difficult at first because it was heartbreaking to see the way that elderly couples would cry when we would go visit them for the first time, or children were getting their first pair of shoes, or widowed mothers crying because we're bringing them food to feed their children for the first time in 2 months. It was heartbreaking to see that, but it was also very heartwarming to know that God sent me to be that first for them. And that's not for me to take the credit. That's completely God, because without God, I would have never gone and moved over there that long. So I think for sure it matured me spiritually too, to learn to just trust God, and that even though it's scary, if he's sending you there, it's for a reason. He's not going to send you there if he doesn't believe that he has a mission for you. So it definitely matured me spiritually, for sure.
Your response is one of maturity, because many people think, oh, I'm going on mission, I'm just going to change the world, and I'm going to win souls, and I'm going to do this. Complete disregard for the fact that there are missionaries who've been there all this time, and you're not going to just go and do what they have toiled and toiled and toiled for. And I think often mission trips are about how God wants to change us and also the people you're going to, but primarily that you are more like Jesus at the end of it.
Yeah. When we take teams out on mission trips, we always say to them, look, our purpose in going with you is to see how you can change. Really, when you take mission teams out to different countries, you just create a lot of hard work for the local people. Not that I'm saying you were a lot of hard work for your local people there. It's just you going. So, but when you take a bigger team, it's lots of hard work for them. And so we say our focus is not so much on the work, although we are going to do things. Our focus is more on how can this trip impact you, and hopefully, gaining that heart for missions, for other people and communities that in the future they might ultimately go long term. And then obviously it's a lot more on the focus on, okay, now what are you going to do to impact the local people there? So I really like that you said actually a lot of it really was about what God did in me, more so than what I actually did end up doing there, even though you did do things and impact the local area. So that's really cool.
Right. And it was, we did go out and do a lot of things. The people that I lived with, the girl Ahava, she's married, her husband's Luis, and they have 2 little kids. And Ahava used to live here in Louisiana. And so I had known her for a few years. And her parents have their own ministry over there too. So when her and her husband got married, they felt like God was calling them to start their own little ministry. And it's now called Our Mountain Tribe. And I was their little guinea pig. I was the first person they hosted in their home. And they're hoping to start bringing teams and stuff and get more support from people. And they were very, very intentional about what they did and who they reached out to and where we went and what we did and what we said. And so I think that also taught me a lot about just how important intentionality is. Because before, I would say things like that I'm like in my head, I might do it, I might not. But now after being there, I had learned that being intentional with your words and your actions and stuff, it really does change you as a person, 100%. And so I think they definitely taught me a lot while I was there. And it's hard being away from them.
Yeah, now you've got the missing them. Now you're back home.
No matter which country I'm in, I'm missing some type of family.
And if you've got a heart for nations, you do give your heart to the nation where you go, and that's really a part of it. If you're going to really be effective, you must.
You really do. Being there for 2 months, I really did leave like half of my heart with them. The culture, the people, my family, like all of it. I kind of just left it there with them because I know that I'll be going back one day to pick it back all up again. So it definitely is hard being away from them. But I talk to them every day. They'll video chat me when they have worship nights. so I can still kind of be a part of everything. And so it really is like a big family over there.
And you said you have this heart for the nations. You've been out to Guatemala. What are you thinking long term? Are you thinking, you feel this calling for the nations? You think that maybe that means you might actually move to another nation for missions? Or, what are you thinking on that side of things?
So it's funny because whenever I was getting ready to leave Guatemala, it was one of my last days there, Ahava and Luis kept asking me, do you think God's going to tell you to stay? Like he's not going to let you go home. He's going to ask you to stay. And I thought about it for a few days and I prayed on it, and I went back to them and I told them, I don't think that God's going to ask me to stay, but I feel like it's going to be right when I get home and I get comfortable and settle back in that he's going to say, go back. And sure enough, 2 days after I got home, this girl at this worship night come up, and I was talking to God and I was saying like, God, it's not time. It's too early. Like I just got home. I want to be home for a little bit before I go back. And this girl comes up to me. She prays over me and she's like, can I tell you what God is telling me? And I knew what it was about. So I want to say no, but I know I need to say yes. So I told her yes. And she said, I know that you're telling God it's too soon and that it's not time and that you're scared. And I was like, well, dang it, there it is.
Stop right there.
Stop right there. I've heard enough. Go away. And so she just kept praying over me. And I definitely do feel called to go back. And I know that I will go back. And whenever she told me that, and I kind of felt like God was saying, go back, I was like, okay, does this mean go back right now? Does this mean go back in a couple of years? Does this mean like, when do you want me to go back? And so I prayed on it for a few weeks, and I listened. I allowed my heart, my ears to be open to hear God. And I felt like God was telling me to be there consistently, but not to live there. And I was like, what does that mean? How am I supposed to be there consistently, but not live there? And next thing you know, a couple weeks later, Ahava messaged me asking if I would be their mission leader and bring teens to them. And I definitely felt like that was God's way of having me there consistently and being a part of that culture, but also I knew that I wasn't supposed to live there forever. And that could change at some point. In the next 10 years, God could tell me, okay, it's your time, pick up and go live there forever. But at the moment, I don't feel called that I'm supposed to live there right now. But I'm also just leaving room for God to come in and intervene at that point. So it's not me trying to make my own plans.
We believe that your generation, facing the many challenges in the world today that you're having to face, nevertheless, that your generation are really looking for a challenge. They're looking for people who say, you can do this, you can do more than you think, you can do more than we think, we want to be your cheerleaders, you can do this. What do you think about that?
I definitely do think our generation sometimes likes to have a lot of confirmation from people. A lot of, like you said, cheerleaders and stuff, which is a good thing. It's good to have that support, but also you won't get that all of the time. There were some people that I was telling, I'm moving to Guatemala for the summer, and they were like, you shouldn't be doing that. It's dangerous over there. God's calling you to leave the country. That's crazy. It's ridiculous. Like that's not how that works. And so while you should have some cheerleaders and you should have support and stuff from your family and close friends, it's not going to be like that for everybody, because everybody doesn't have the same heart for God that we have. And so there will be people who push you down on it, and there will be people who try to discourage you and tell you that you're crazy for hearing someone inside your head telling you to go leave the country. And I did get that a lot from people, and I think it didn't really discourage me, but at the same time I was like, okay, like God's calling me to do something good. Why are these people putting it down, and why aren't people constantly supporting me on it. But then God, I kind of felt like, was telling me, like, you don't need their confirmation, you don't need their support, because if it's what I'm calling you to, then I'm all you need for it. And so I think after that, I kind of just was like, okay, people are going to think what they want. They're going to say what they want. There will be people who support me and people who think it's ridiculous. But either way, God's calling you to this mission, not those people.
Yeah.
Well, that is in life, I think, for your generation too. I mean, we talk about needing Daniels who are going to stand at the open window regardless of what other people are doing. When everybody else is saying bow down, they're going to stand at the open window and say, we will not bow down, we will stand alone. And that that call to your generation to stand up and to go regardless, I think is going to get more and more important as the days go by.
I think it will too.
And it's not going to be a little group, it's going to be stand-alone time in the nation as well as out of the nation.
Yeah, and we're big cheerleaders of your generation, young people that are in our lives, encouraging them to pursue the dreams that God has given them. And there are a few times where we will come down hard on the older generations, and one of those is if they start trying to crush the dreams of the next generation. And if we see it happening around us, we will stop the adults from talking. We said, don't you dare crush the dreams of the next generation. You should be encouraging them and helping them to pursue those dreams. And if in the future a young person discovers, you know what, that dream actually, it was my own thoughts, it wasn't God's thoughts, well, let them discover that for themselves on the journey. Let them find out if the dream was of his or not. But what gives us the right to be the people to crush the dreams of the next generation? And so, you know, we're here to cheer you on, to help you, to encourage you in your journey. Don't let other people crush your dreams. If they try to, send them our way. We'll have a conversation. Okay. And so Emerson, thank you. We're so happy that we got to spend some time with you. We spent some time with your parents, obviously, on previous episodes. But thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, thank you so much for asking me. I loved being able to share everything that I had experienced with adoption and my trip to Guatemala.
Well, your sharing is impactful, and people across the world are going to hear this, and hopefully others are going to rise up with the go, both to the nations and for adoption.
Yes, I hope so.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.